Hello and welcome to Name on the Trophy, the Manchester United podcast and YouTube show with me, Dominic Booth. Manchester United are on a roll, 7 wins on the bounce now. And to analyse their latest wins over Bournemouth and Everton, I'm joined by MEN football editor Supremo and the only man who in his career has been able to call himself both my boss and at another time my equal at work. It's Liam Corless. How are you, Liam?
Yeah, very good, thank you. I thought you were going to say my boss and my friend for a second, but
No, not absolutely not.
no,
Um,
yeah, it's good to speak to you. Obviously, miss you at the MEN, and I'm coming here doing you a favour, giving you a bit of profile on
yeah, so good to get someone of Liam's immense profile
it.
on the pod.
My
Uh,
2,000 social media followers.
I'm hoping to get Liam's cats in the background as well if they make an appearance. But at the moment, it's just his arty beers in the background. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, they're asleep, mate. So
Well, hopefully it's not too interesting when we don't wake them up. Right, so we'll get on to United's. We'll talk about the latest 2 wins, basically Bournemouth and Everton. But in general, Liam, it's 7 wins on the bounce now. There's a lot of sort of excitement flying around United at the moment, it feels like. And I went to the last 2 games at Old Trafford. It seems like there's a good atmosphere among the fans as well. How excited can people get about this, do you think? And how much praise does Ten Hag deserve for what he's done?
I think the manager deserves a huge amount of praise. He's come in the summer and obviously inherited a broken squad, and dressing room morale was very low. Obviously, had that very poor start against Brentford and Brighton. You can't really look too much into that, and obviously they're doing really well now. They've won 5 since the World Cup. They've won 10 from the last 11 in all competitions. There has been some like very tentative title talk after the last league game, which is probably still a little bit premature. Um, but with City and Arsenal to come, they'll be the acid test to see how far this team has come under Ten Hag.
Yeah, these 2 wins, there's been a lot of positives, and obviously Marcus Rashford's performances are probably like the standout positive, and he seems to be just on absolute fire at the moment. I've talked about him on the podcast before, but what what sort of what notes of caution are there from those 2 games, and maybe particularly the Everton one, where I think United struggled a little bit for fluency, and in both games looked a bit shaky at the back. It looked like they could be got at the other end. And obviously, like you say, with 2 such good sides to come, City and Arsenal, that is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, I think they did. They've obviously kept clean sheets up until last night since the World Cup, so they have kept 4 clean sheets. But I guess De Gea kind of bailed them out a bit against Bournemouth with a couple of good saves, and his error was like, well, the reason they didn't keep a clean sheet yesterday. Um, I'd say maybe United need to land on a solid back four that they can consistently play with. There seems to have been a lot of chopping and changing since the World Cup, and I know some of that will be because of Varane and Martinez went to the final, so they had a little bit more time off than like maybe obviously like Maguire was back and Lindelof didn't go to the World Cup. Shaw was back. I think in the next couple of games, I mean, obviously City is the game after the Charlton game. They just need to maybe land on a settled back four.
Yeah, it was the back four was pretty well set before the World Cup with Varane and Martinez playing, and Dalot firmly nailed down the right back spot. I guess left back was the only one maybe under consideration between Shaw and Malacia, but recently we've had Wan-Bissaka do fairly well. Dalot didn't
Yeah,
truly convince me against Everton. Malacia, I think is behind Shaw, quite firmly behind Shaw. If it's a shootout between those two, is that the first choice back four still? Is there any questions about people coming in?
I'm not sure. It's quite interesting because the players that have kind of lost the place in the team have not necessarily lost the place in the team from playing bad. It's because of how well the players that have come in have done. So I don't think anyone expected Wan-Bissaka to come in and play as well as he has done at right back since Christmas. Don't think anyone expected Luke Shaw to be a centre back and very effective at being one. Um, I'd say it's less the back four is less certain than it was before the World Cup, but I don't think it's because anyone's playing like excessively poorly. I'd say the only one certainty in United's first choice defence is Varane playing at centre back. And I think obviously Shaw's a certain starter, but now is it as a left back or is it as a left sided centre back? So
Yeah, he seems to sort of not change his performance too much, whether he plays left centre back or left back. He seems to be as commanding as he can be in either position. And I think even against Everton, he was swapping positions with Malacia sometimes and bombing down the left and still having a bit of an influence going forward. I guess that just shows his confidence at the moment.
yeah, I think he's a brilliant player. He's always been very good on the ball. I think Ten Hag must be playing him at the left side of centre back because he's a fairly similar profile player in terms of being left footed, being good on the ball. To Martinez, he was obviously kind of working his way back into the team after the World Cup. I think what it does also say the way that Ten Hag's setting his defence up at the moment, it's not looking positive for Harry Maguire. I think it's looking like his days are numbered at the club.
Yeah, there was some complaints near where I was sitting during the Bournemouth game when Maguire and Lindelof were playing together. I don't know if they actually did that poorly. I think there's sometimes a bit of an overreaction towards their performances, and I know they are like the second string duo now at the back, but they're not a bad second choice duo, are they? Really, like, Maguire's not as bad as a lot of people say, and Lindelof he's always been a fairly reliable, if not sort of elite performer for United.
Yeah, and I think going forward, Lindelof will probably be more satisfied than Maguire with playing that kind of backup role, like third choice, fourth choice, come in for the cup games, play a few in the league. I don't think long term Maguire's like there's too much stuff has happened around him for him to stay at the club like as a third choice. I would say like it costs so much money. He's the club captain. There's just it's kind of like it's obviously nowhere near like the magnitude of the Ronaldo side show. But whenever Maguire comes on, it's always a talking point, and it shouldn't really be that way.
No, yeah, you're probably right. It's not like when Eric Bailly was the third, fourth choice centre back. It was not really any debate over whether he should be that because of his sort of fitness record and how erratic he could be. Where does Maguire end up? Do you think he stays in the Premier League long term? Do you think does he do a Chris Smalling and go to Italy? I can see that kind of thing working out for him. It doesn't seem to be any suitors for him at the moment, but I don't think that will happen till the summer anyway, personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he ends up, but I think United have still got a good chance of recouping a decent amount of money. I mean, obviously they're not going to get anywhere near the 80 million he spent on him, but I'd say he's still like a really good centre back. He did have a good World Cup. Like obviously proved Gareth Southgate wrong to start proved him right to keep him in the squad and start him in every game. And I think he's still got a good career ahead of him as a Premier League defender.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, another player who impressed in the World Cup and who is impressing so much at the moment is Marcus Rashford. It's felt in these last two games, Liam, like it's not one man team territory, but there's a lot on Rashford's shoulders, and he is producing a lot to get United the goals. And all three goals against Everton came from Rashford. He provided the assist for Antony. He forced the own goal from Conor Cody and obviously scored the penalty. He's just like, yeah, he's in a different category now of player to even a few months ago, isn't he? The way he's playing.
Yeah, he's looked absolutely brilliant. I mean, I was so frustrated with his level last season because you know what he's capable of, and like it almost makes it more annoying when a good player is playing badly and when an average player is playing badly because like you're so much better than this. And obviously that's what's happened this season. Like he's turned it on since the World Cup. Like every game he plays, you're just thinking he's going to score. He's going to score like literally, and he has scored in every single game since the World Cup. He looks so dangerous coming in off the left hand side. I think everyone that accepts that that's his best position now. He's not a central striker, but he's a massive threat off the left, massive goal scoring threat, and yeah, long may his good form continue.
What do you think he said to Bruno when he took that penalty off him against Everton? Do you think that was to try and keep the goal scoring run going? That's kind of what I thought it was, but maybe there's something deeper at play.
Well, I hadn't noticed that. Was Bruno setting up to take it himself?
Yeah. I was in the Stretford end, and Bruno took the ball and was going to take it, and everyone sort of expected that to happen, as you know, Fernandes usually takes the penalties, but there's a little chat and Rashford took it, and obviously maybe to do with the confidence levels of the two players, but Fernandes himself needs a goal at the minute. He hasn't had one for a wee while.
Yeah, well, I think if your striker wants to take your penalties, I know it's kind of a cliche. Your striker should always take your penalties, but you can't knock Rashford for having that confidence, and obviously he tucks it away pretty nicely. Bruno, I know his numbers, like a lot's been talked about in terms of his numbers not being as good as his first 18 months when he was just, posting astronomical figures for goals and assists. But I think his role's kind of different now. He was so integral to what wasn't not a poor team, but a team that wasn't quite as balanced in terms of the quality in it. Whereas now the team is a lot more balanced, so he doesn't have to take on such that kind of like talismanic role that he was playing under Solskjaer in those first 18 months.
Yeah, it's a decent point. I suppose with him and Eriksen playing the roles they do, they're kind of both there to control the game for United. And then the goal scoring onus is on the likes of Rashford. But the goals aren't really coming from anywhere else in the forward line at the moment. I know Antony got one against Everton, but again, speaking from being in the crowd, he seems to be a player that fans are not sure about and that people think can do more. And it seems to frustrate supporters quite a lot with what he's doing. Do you share that opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a doubter from the outset. I'm not saying that I've been proved right, but I don't know if you remember, I took a lot of pelters for questioning his performance in his first game against Arsenal.
Yeah.
When he scored, I didn't think he played great that game, but obviously his first game, give him a lot of time, which is the point that I made at the time. I think he's obviously got a lot of quality. Like you can tell how sharp he is. He's so agile. He's so skillful. I think he just needs to slow down a little bit. Like everything he does when he gets the ball, he just seems to be doing so moving rapidly, like playing the wrong pass, doing flicks that he doesn't need to do. And yeah, it's just needs to take a little bit of time. And also a lot was made of his one-footedness last night because there were a couple of counter attacks where he's obviously bombing down the right, had Rashford on the left, like pulling in, and Martial. Well, because he's so left-footed, he can't arc the ball around with a right-footed pass. So he's stopping and he's coming back and he's maybe trying to play the ball with his left foot when it's not necessarily on anymore. And I think that is an issue in terms of like the balance of the attack.
Yeah, that lets defenders sort of get back. I thought when he does chop back, and Dalot seemed to be a little bit frustrated at times. He was giving Antony the ball, and Antony was almost cutting back towards where Dalot was, and they were almost occupying the same space at times. That was a little bit frustrating. Rashford doesn't do that because he can go either way, despite being right-footed. Rashford has obviously got the pace that Antony potentially doesn't have, and maybe a bit more like variety in his game.
Yeah, I mean Rashford's not necessarily the most two-footed player, but you can clearly tell that's something he's working on. And he's happy to go either way. Like Antony always seems to favour that kind of cut inside and maybe try and get a shot away off the right wing. Whereas obviously Rashford, well, he can cut inside as we've seen, but then both of his goals yesterday came from going down the outside of the defender, and yeah, like like you said, he's probably got a little bit more variety than Antony at the moment. But then again, he is 25 and Antony's 22, so that
Antony
might come.
new to the league as well, I suppose. I mean, he's not even had half a season really when you think about the break, and he arrived a bit late and stuff like that. So, but is it right for fans to be getting on his back so soon? I did just feel a few murmurs in the crowd, and I thought, I'm not sure this is right. I know €100 million price tag probably puts pressure on by itself, but the fans really need to be supporting, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he doesn't decide the price tag, so it shouldn't really be, that shouldn't be a reason for fans to air their frustration more at him. But obviously that's the nature of, that's what football fans are like, isn't it? Like not all of them have that balanced approach, like and want to give the players a little bit more time. Yeah, not sure. I'm not really sure what else to say about it other than he's very early in the league. He has scored 4 goals. I know 3 of them came very early on, and yesterday was his first goal since was it the Everton game when Ronaldo scored the winner? That was
Yeah.
his first. I know he had an injury before the World Cup and has been the World Cup, so maybe saying that he's not scored in 3 months probably sounds a lot worse than it is when he's probably only played a month's worth of games in that time. But yeah, I think there's still obviously a massive amount of potential there, and yeah, I'm not writing him off by any means just yet.
Yeah, it does feel like United just need a bit more from some of their other forward options that aren't called Marcus Rashford. Anthony Martial continues to flatter to deceive, I think, in the number 9 position. We've obviously got Jadon Sancho, who's not featured at all since the World Cup break, and I believe he's on his way back slowly and steadily. Garnacho looks raw but exciting. I don't think Ten Hag really considers him a regular starter at this point. And then you're down to sort of Elanga and people like that, Pellistri, who's not even played. So it does feel like United need something from Sancho, Martial, and or Antony. 2 of those 3 need to be on regular, consistent form to match Rashford.
Yeah, I mean Martial, obviously Ten Hag does like him, and it's kind of weird to think, was it last season when he was on loan at Seville? And
And just didn't do anything and didn't even score, did he? Did he score once in like 16 games?
Yeah, well, I don't know the exact figures, but I know it was a very underwhelming loan spell, and nobody really expected him to come back. And then Ten Hag kind of made it fairly clear early on that he was a big fan of him and that he was going to be part of his plans. And he is an effective front man. He just doesn't score enough goals. I know when he joined United in 2015, he's had 2 seasons where he scored over 15 goals. And if you're wearing the number 9 at Man United, well, I know he wore the number 11 for a few years when Zlatan came in, but you got to score a lot more goals than that. He had obviously a really good chance yesterday with that counter attack when Rashford drove at the defence and played him in. And yeah, Pickford made the save. A top striker should really want to be scoring that chance. As far as Sancho's concerned, we don't really know what's gone on behind the scenes, so I wouldn't want to speculate. We know he's obviously got a lot of quality from his time at Dortmund, and Ten Hag's obviously shown that man management is one of his main skills. He's revived Rashford. He has got Martial playing well again. He just got to hope with time, he'll do the same with Sancho.
Yeah, it'll look like an absolute masterstroke of man management, won't it? If Sancho does come back and he's a bit fitter and a bit sharper and he starts producing numbers, everyone will be, praising Ten Hag, and rightly so. And especially after the decision not the really decision to get rid of Ronaldo, but whatever happened with the Ronaldo situation, with him eventually leaving, it's sort of like Ten Hag saying to Sancho, "You're my man." And United aren't likely to sign a number 9 now in January, despite all these millions of transfer stories that are coming out. So it is sort of needed on Sancho's shoulders to step up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure I see him as
He's not a
like
number 9, no,
a
but
central front man.
He adds to the options because United haven't got that many. That's the point I'm making, really.
Yeah, he definitely adds to the pool, and obviously, if he comes back in and he does really well on the left, that does kind of give you a bit more of an option to put Rashford through the middle, because you don't feel like you're losing as much from taking Rashford, off the left wing. But yeah, United obviously need goals from other sources than Rashford. It'll be interesting to see what they do this month, because they're obviously not going to spend a massive amount. It feels like they might spend a massive amount in the summer on a new striker, because that is the glaring hole in the team where they're missing that real world class player.
Who'd you start against City in the front three, Liam?
I'd probably just go Rashford, Martial, and Antony. Obviously, Rashford's a no-brainer, and I think Martial is too, given the lack of striking options. And then on the other wing, what you're looking at, Antony or Garnacho, and Garnacho's more of a natural left-sided forward. He likes to cut in. Pretty much most wingers these days like to play inverted wingers when you got a left footer on the right and a right footer on the left. And yeah, I think I would keep Antony in the team.
Probably would agree. I probably would agree. I just had one idea that you could potentially put Bruno out to the right, and then pack the midfield with one extra sort of defensive-minded player, whether it be Fred or McTominay, and then play Eriksen in that slightly more advanced position. But he doesn't really want to do that. Ten Hag never seems like he wants to do that. He always plays Eriksen and Fernandes ahead of one sitting midfielder, doesn't he? It didn't really work against City at the Etihad. United got absolutely picked apart for doing it. But I just wonder whether a more pragmatic view would be to pack the midfield a bit.
Maybe, but like you say, Ten Hag doesn't seem to like adapt his approach based on the teams he's playing. He seems to be like show his cards and mine are better than yours. Like he seems to have that confidence in his team. In terms of the difference between the last derby, United are obviously at home this time, which is a big boost psychologically. You know, they'll have the support of the fans. And then I think United are a lot further ahead in the development than they were at the Etihad derby. I know United had won four on the bounce going into that game when they lost 6-3, and there was like a fair amount of optimism around it, and it was a massive reality check for how far you needed to go, how far United needed to go to catch up with City. But I think, like I say, United are a lot better now than they were, and City aren't in brilliant form themselves. So
it's definitely. Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say you couldn't really question Ten Hag if he went, with an aggressive team like an offensive team. I think he's well within his rights to do that.
It's a good time to play City, right? They just seem to be struggling for a little bit of fluency. They look a little bit just off the pace from where they were before the World Cup break. De Bruyne looks a bit out of sorts. Haaland's not had the best. I know he scored a couple, but he's not been in as blistering a form as he was before the break either. And with sort of City and Arsenal taking lumps out of each other a little bit in the title race and competing for that, United can maybe slip into that third place and just make top four their own. With if they get 4 points in these two games against Arsenal and City, that would be absolutely perfect, I think.
Yeah, I've had a few. That is a question that's come up when I've spoken with my friends and like people who support United. Like, how many points would you take from those two games? A lot of them said two, which is like two draws. Like, and that shows that United are making progress because they're taking points off who the teams who have been the two best in the league so far this season. I think two's good if top four's the aspiration, and that's what it still seems to be. But I think like if they did want to squeeze into that title race and get in the conversation for that, which still, like I say, it is premature until we've played those games. But if they get 4 points from those two games, I think that would be an unbelievable return for United.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit far off that kind of talk, and I think we were in a similar place under Solskjaer and in that sort of semi-title challenge that they had in the COVID season 2021. But I think this side, it'd probably be too soon for them, and a top four position, especially given the caliber of the teams fighting for the top four, Liverpool and Spurs outside of it at the moment. I think that'd be a pretty good return for Ten Hag in his first season.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I'm not getting carried away at all. I'm thinking they will challenge for the title. I think they have too many periods in matches where they're not the dominant team. And I think, obviously, come back to the striker issue, they're not ruthless enough a lot of the time. And yeah, top four, like, I think even before the season, people were saying, I wouldn't even be bothered about top four because it was so bleak after that Solskjaer Rangnick season when everything just looked broken, didn't it? I think people were just saying, I'm not bothered about the top four in the first season of Ten Hag. I just want to see some identity. I want to see some progress. And the fact that United kind of look nailed on for top four and the current form, I mean, I know anything can happen between now and the end of the season. I think that speaks volumes for how well he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I was the one who I tweeted saying let him finish 8th in his first season, Ten Hag, because it was during those times under Rangnick where United can buy a win and it just looked so disjointed, and like you said, the whole club was fragmented. But he actually has been a lot more pragmatic than that. He hasn't just come in idealistically, this is how I'm going to play. I know he has a certain sort of few cornerstones of his tactical style that he doesn't budge from, but when he makes the sub, like he brings on a centre back in the last 10 minutes to go 5 at the back, or he takes off Eriksen, brings on a more defensive midfielder. He is sort of gunning for the results. I think he knows that, say, a top 4 finish and winning a cup competition, that would be an absolute storming first season, wouldn't it?
Yeah, magnificent. You can tell how serious he's taking the cups. He put out such a strong team last night. I know it's become like Premier League teams, not necessarily United, but Premier League teams. Some of them are generally criticised for how they approach the third round of the FA Cup. I know Newcastle's the most obvious example that springs to mind. Don't know how they'll approach it under the new ownership, but they used to be absolutely battered for always putting out like pretty weak teams in the FA Cup third round. Not necessarily saying that they would have had as much of a chance of United as of winning an FA Cup in previous years, but he has shown how serious he is taking it. And obviously, there's another cup quarter final to come next week against Charlton, and what a favourable draw that is. They should win that at home, and then there'll be the 2-legged semi-final and a Wembley final before hopefully ending a trophy drought that's been going on for far too long now.
And you say favourable draw, but Ten Hag probably won't even field that weaker side against Charlton. I can see, and I think Fernandes is suspended. Maybe 1 or 2 might come in, the likes of potentially Fred, Garnacho from the start, but it's not going to be complete second string against Charlton, because I think Ten Hag realises a semi-final is quite a good thing on his CV at this point, and maybe makes up for if United do come up short in a title race, if they're even ever in a title race, or just if they finish 4th, even potentially outside the top 4, League Cup makes up for that a little bit.
Yeah, it would be it's a thing that people wanted Solskjaer to do, wasn't it? Was win that trophy, and even though they had the Europa League final in last 2021 now, I guess. People was saying that that'll prove like United are making progress. Like
it doesn't actually prove it, does it though?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, whereas it feels a bit different under Ten Hag. It doesn't feel like he's just winning a trophy because he wants that kind of monkey off his back, and then he can kick on and win something else. He just wants to win, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I don't think he will field a weakened team. There might be a few changes, but there's 4 days between the Charlton game and the derby, and that's more than enough given United have been playing 2 games a week for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think over the course of since the World Cup and maybe a couple of months before, United are justifiably the 3rd or 4th best team in the country, and Ten Hag probably sees that and sees that they can go even further and get better, and thinks, well, we deserve a trophy. You know, there's no point in us shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to win an FA Cup or League Cup, and like you say, it's not one of those Mourinho things where, if the team that wins the FA Cup goes on to win the league, it's just win a cup.
Mm. Yeah, United, like I know you said, since the World Cup, they've been the 3rd or 4th best team in the league. But I was looking at just the results since the start of the season, and discounting that the Brighton and Brentford aberrations, they've only picked up 3 fewer points than Arsenal since those opening 2 games of the season, and I think that just shows how well they're doing to keep pace with well, not necessarily keep pace, because it's still 9 points behind them, but in terms of the form guide, like they've put 3 points less than Arsenal in the last 15 games, I think, which is pretty special form.
Yeah, probably the best team actually since the World Cup on form, and having won every game and only just conceded the first goals in that Everton game. All right then. So next week coming up, Liam, Charlton and City. What's an acceptable return, would you say, would be to obviously win the Charlton game without a hitch and just to get a point at home to City?
I think that's maybe the minimum you could want, like, because you kind of look at Charlton, and with no disrespect to them, that should be viewed as a banker. Do you agree?
It's a banker, yeah. It's just how I think United will win come what may, but it's just how they win. I think they need to potentially win with a little bit of style and put down a marker. 3 or 4 at least, given how they've been beating teams before Charlton. Like, they saw off Bournemouth and Forest and Everton quite easily, haven't they? So it needs to be very convincing, I think.
Yeah, well, as long as he gets to the semi-finals, I'll be happy with that. And then when it comes to the derby, obviously City tend to, well,
One
City
flies out
show
the
up.
window, everyone always says.
City show up most weeks, but they tend to show up in derby. Obviously, last season's, I know the Liverpool 5-0 was, in terms of the scoreline, it was a shocker for United, but a lot of people say that the City game was even worse, even though they only lost 2-0, because of just how utterly dominant City were against United. Obviously, they scored 6 in October, so it's not going to be an easy game, but I think United fans will be going into that thinking, given City don't look in the very best form at the moment, thinking they can get a point out of the game, they can get something out of the game.
Yeah, and United obviously have those home results against Liverpool, Spurs, and Arsenal this season to sort of keep in the back of their minds, and they can take points off these decent sides things that they weren't doing last year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the record against the top 6 is pretty good. Like, I know those games were at home, and the game against Tottenham, that people were raving over that as if it was one of the best United performances in years, and it probably was, to be honest. But I don't know how much you can read into it, given how poor Tottenham were on the day. Beating Liverpool at that period of the season, I remember the mood around the club was so negative because that was the game after the Brentford 4-0, and obviously we didn't know how much Liverpool were going to drop off this season at that point. And obviously inflicting the only defeat of Arsenal's season so far. So yeah, United have been good against the big teams, and I'm pretty sure they'll be quite confident of turning up and like I say, getting at least a point against City.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's going to be another big week for United. That's all we got time for today. I need to do this because I keep forgetting to do this, but Name on the Trophy is on Twitter @onthetrophy, and you can give us a like and a subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We are Name on the Trophy, and on YouTube as well. Liam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Yeah,
unique insight as always, and those beers look quite unique as well behind you.
Yeah, I don't know what you want me to say to that. I like drinking craft beer and I like football.
Such a lad, aren't you?
No, yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate it. I would say let's do it again sometime, but we'll have to wait and see on that front, I think. But thank you very much to Liam, and thank you very much to you for watching and listening. We'll be back with another episode of the Name on the Trophy United podcast very, very soon. Cheers.